Working without a debugger can be a real struggle. Debugger is a tool that lets you execute code line by line, stop at desired moment, and also view variable values. While it is a very basic tool that is easy to learn, debugging has way more to it, and learning to debug efficiently may take you some time. I really advise you to find some videos on this topic on YouTube or maybe find some articles, because I will mostly focus on those who already debugged something before but struggle in Unreal because Unreal doesn't have built-in debugger for Python, and that means that we have to use another solution and connect to a so-called debugging server. Before we go to this debugging server topic, I have to mention that my VS Code workspace has only two folders. One of them is a Python script plugin directory, and you can find it in your engine installation path /engine/plugins/experimental. And the other folder is just my project /content/Python. Let's go to this Python script plugin, then content, Python, and debugpy Unreal. This is a very small file with some support for remote debugging for VS Code made by Epic. We have some steps with setup, and we will go one by one. First, we should import debugpy Unreal into our engine. However, the second step says that we should install some module. So what is going on? Epic made a very simple support that requires another module that is widely used across the world for remote debugging. This module is called debugpy, and if we scroll down, we will see that it is just installed with a single pip command. This command installs the module directly into our Python interpreter files of our engine. I don't advise this approach, to be honest, however, it will work for most of you. So what is my opinion and why do I dislike this approach? If you do it this way, you will modify your engine files directly. That means that you will affect the whole instance of your engine. If you have multiple projects that use same engine instance, they all will be affected on your machine. However, at the same time, it doesn't mean that it is easy to share with other projects for users who use various number of engine instances or just work, on different machines. Also, we shouldn't play directly with engine files. We may break something, and what is more, not everyone downloads those files from some Git or Perforce repository. People just install engines themselves, so your changes will not be reflected on their machines. If you had a plugin, you would be able to share it, and they will get the module without any additional work or even rights to be able to run the pip command. And lastly, there is probably the most important thing. This video focuses on VS Code debugging, however, you may be using some different IDE, and I even have another video on debugging those tools with PyCharm. While VS Code uses debugpy module, PyCharm uses so-called pydeft PyCharm module. They do almost the same, but they are a bit different. However, under the hood, they both use pydeft module, but they may use it with slight modifications or just in different versions. And that means that if you install both of those to the engine, you will very likely be getting some crashes due to miscompatibility. If we ship both modules as plugins to the engine, you will be able to disable the one you don't need, and everyone, both PyCharm and VS Code users, will be able to cooperate. So, we are not going to do it this way. We will make a plugin ourselves. So head to your engine, and now left top corner, Edit tab, and navigate to Plugins. On the left side there is an Add button, click on it, and let's pick Content Only. Don't be surprised if you have more options to choose from than me. I have only a single one, and that is fine because I haven't compiled my engine myself. Let's pick some name. Make it straightforward, like debugpy Python package, and author is Tech Art Corner. Create plugin, and once it has been created, you can find it in project, other category. Make sure it is enabled, and you can also change category it is assigned to. So click on edit, go to the category tab and type something like scripting. Just make sure not to make any typo. Let's hit OK, and now it's in scripting category. Great. Now what we have to do is to go to Content Browser and find the plugin. I can see it under the Plugins tab here. However, it is not visible for you. You probably just have to go to Settings on the right side of the Content Browser and enable Show Plugin Content. Now back to our directory. Let's open it in Explorer. So right-click, Show in Explorer, and create a new folder called Python. It is content/Python directory, and that means that if anytime I put some Python files or modules here, my editor, Python interpreter will be able to find it, which is just great. We only have to install Python modules here and we will be able to use them. So make sure to copy this path and save it somewhere in some notepad or a sticky note so you can set this directory as our installation folder later. And now let's get our Python interpreter path, because if we want to run some installation process, we should use the interpreter we are going to use our module with. So back to Unreal, then to output log, and first thing we want to do is import Unreal. Second thing we want to do is just call a function called getInterpreter executable path. And if you are in Python REPL mode, it will be printed straight to the console after hitting enter. Copy this path as well, and now let's open some command line. We will use command line to install our module. However, first we have to make sure that it can be installed with something. That something is a Python package manager. How do we make sure it is present? First, paste path to your copied python.exe and make sure you are using double quotes, because if you have any white space in your path, it will break without those quotes. Then -m to specify a module we are going to run, and the module we have to run is called ensure pip. My output says that requirement has already been satisfied. In your case, if you had something to be installed, the output may be a little different. Now, as we are sure that we have pip installed, we just have to call python x-m again, but instead ensure pip, we are just running pip module, then install command. And before you type name of the module, you have to type a target directory. So --target equals, and now we paste our content Python folder of the plugin, but remember about using double quotes. Then just a white space and the debugpy, which is name of the module to be installed. Hit enter. Some installation process is running, and our folder has been populated. We can see if it works after restarting the engine. Engine restarted. Great. I will import debugpy just to make sure there is no errors. I have hit enter and module is not available. So let's go to edit plugins and make sure that our plugin is enabled, because sometimes, even though we added it and it was enabled, the engine settings could have not been saved. So now we have to restart it once more, and I hope everything will be fine. I am back. Let's import debugpy again. And it works flawlessly. So we can get back to VS Code and move to another step. The debugpy has been installed, so maybe let's not skip the first step, which was import debugpy Unreal, and let's type this line in editor. Okay, import it, go back to VS Code, and what is the third step? Run debugpy Unreal start. Let's copy this line. To begin debug session. Okay, that means that Unreal will start trying to connect to our debug server. Let's type it here. And because it is trying to connect, it has frozen. This is expected, it's not a bug, it is just waiting for us to run the debugger in VS Code. Back to Visual. Attach your debugger from VS Code. See launch.json configuration below. What is going on? Visual Studio Code uses launch.json files to describe launch or debug configurations we have. We probably don't have such file yet, so we have to create it ourselves. To do it, go to Run and Debug tab on the left side, or just press Ctrl-Shift-D. And once you are here, press Create Launch.json file. Now we have some drop-down. We have to decide where our JSON will be put to. First option is that Python script plugin directory, but I don't want to modify any external plugin, and this is made by Epic. So, not the first thing. Second thing here is Python directory in my project. That suits me well, but there is also workspace. This is a VS Code workspace, and it is a good choice for those who work on those changes locally and don't want to share the JSON. However, in my case, the important thing is that I don't really have a VS Code workspace prepared, and I don't want to. So let me store it in my project directory, which is the middle option. Now there is another dropdown, and we have to pick what kind of launch configuration do we need. We want to connect to a debug server, so let's pick remote attach. We're asked about the host. It is our machine, so localhost, and port, let's go with the default. Some JSON was created, and we already have some run and debug configuration available here. But it's not ready. The debugpy Unreal file has some example. So let me move the JSON file to the right side so we can compare our stuff with the example. They advise us to change name of the configuration to Unreal Engine Python. That is a good advice. We will be able to see what we are running in VS Code and we will make less mistakes. So let's change the name. Type, request, connection, these things are all the same. However, path mappings, this is something interesting. Our debugger doesn't really know where our files are stored, and the debugger was prepared to be able to connect to a remote machine. So that's why the mappings have both local root and remote root. Local means that this is the code we have on our machine and we use it for putting breakpoints. Remote root is code of the process that is being executed, and having both of those means that we have some kind of feeling like we're working on that remote machine directly. So in those path mappings, we should put all the folders we have in our workspace. But I mean root folders, which is the Python script plugin, maybe go directly with content Python, and our project folder /content/Python. So I have it prepared already, and I am not going with this workspace folder. I will go with direct paths. However, if your code is centralized in some root, you can use so-called workspace folder and make some relative paths. But for me, this is a path that looks like this. Then another entry is my own project. Let me add it here. And we are almost done. We have to look for more differences between Epic's example and our configuration. They have something called redirect output. That means that whatever is printed into editor's console will be also visible in VS Code. That's great. Let's just paste it here. And this just my code property means, as tooltip says, that we are not able to debug external libraries. And I don't like it. So let me change it to false. Now, as you may remember, our engine is frozen. You cannot really interact with it. That is because it's waiting for the connection. And the last step we have, besides saving this JSON, is exactly starting the connection. So, get back to Run and Debug tab. As you can see, our configuration name has already changed. If it haven't changed for you, you may just have to save the JSON or just run it once and it will update. And let's run and debug. We have debug console that says that debugger has been attached and a new window for interacting with a debugger, and that window will be handy very soon. The fifth step in this document says that we can use debugpy unreal.breakpoint function to stop the debugger on the next statement executed. However, my take on it is to completely forget about it. If you have some code that you want to debug in your tool, just go to this code, like this debug me file, and put breakpoints there. When this code will be executed, a breakpoint will be hit. So let's test it. We have debug_me file, and we have to import it into Unreal. Import debug me. Editor is frozen. That's because we are debugging. And here in VS Code, we have just hit the breakpoint. If you don't know shortcuts for using the debugger, just hover over those buttons. Continue is F5, moving into the next code line is F10, and you can also step into some function or just step out of it. You can restart debugging or even disconnect the debugger. Let me step over. Then once again, so we are in this inner method, and maybe once again and once again, and we have initialized some variable. Those variables will be visible on the left panel in Variables tab. You just have to unfold this Locals tab. As you can see, the values are updating, and once we step out of these variables scope, they disappear. We also have some call stack that tells us where our code was called from, and the call stack is something very, very important when it comes to debugging exceptions, but delving deep into that would completely change the topic of this video. So now let me just hit continue in the debugger, get back to Unreal. As you can see, it has been unfrozen. And let's summarize what we learned today. We have learned how to debug our tools remotely using VS Code. And we have learned to create a plugin with desired Python module. If you are a PyCharm user, make sure to check out the other video in my course. And also, if you don't want to create those plugins yourself, the Udemy course has them in their content. But if you want them to be up to date, you will have to do it yourself, because I am not able to track every release of debugpy or PyDev PyCharm module. That's all for today. I hope you liked the video and see you in the next one.